Welcome to Connexion, the channel where everyone's voice matters. My name is Bilitis, or you can call me Actress of Change. If you're new to Connexion, what to expect? You should expect to meet inspiring men and women living for a mission bigger than themselves. And they are here, to help you to continue or to start yourself to live a life chosen in service to others or your community, for example. So I definitely invite you to subscribe, to continue to grow and learn. Today, I'm pleased to introduce you to another guest who dedicates her life to support her community further and beyond. Let me introduce you to Lisa Thompson Smeddle. Lisa Thompson Smeddle holds, first of all, a master and honors degree in sustainable development from Stellenbosch University in South Africa. With over 30 years of experience within NGO, she has a double cap between understanding and working closely with programs, worldwide programs, international for AIDS, but as well to dedicate her life locally on the ground to make a difference directly. And she's as well the director of the USA and Republic of South Africa registered Sustainable Development Network and African Sustainable Academy. And with her passion for development in Africa, she as well acts as a sustainability advisor to Family Health International, the FHI 360, an umbrella grants mechanism managing a $93 million US aid PERFA grant in South Africa, meaning a funding by the US president for an emergency plan for AIDS release. Lisa was also the program coordinator for the Sustainability Institute and as well course designer lecturer at Stellenbosch University. She has worked as a consultant with international, African and South African aid and government agencies, university, and more. Please welcome Lisa Thompson Smeddle.
I feel like there should be a drum roll. Wow, it's amazing that you can remember all of these things, Bilitis. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here and to learn about what you're doing. I just want to applaud you for the work that you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much for taking the time as well to be here on Connexion to share more about your mission and what makes you feel alive. And could you tell us more about your calling? How did it happen? How did you find yourself, you being a Californian, an American, and being now in South Africa for so long? What happened? Tell us.
What happened? That's a funny story. So from the time I can ever remember being able to think, I wanted to be in Africa. And it's really funny. I had a Zoom call with my mother the other night, and she said to me, Lisa, from the time you were 4 years old, you've been telling me you wanted to be in Africa, and I always knew you were going to end up there. And I think at 4 years old, you don't really have a solid understanding of your future, but I just knew that Africa was where I wanted to be. And so I ended up doing a degree in psychology, and then I worked as a diplomat in the Foreign Service for the US State Department for many years, stationed at the US Embassy in Paris, and then in London, and then I wanted to be in Africa. So I actually left the diplomatic corps and came to South Africa and started working in communities at the end of the 80s when apartheid was in the midst of all of its throes. And it was really an interesting time to be here because Nelson Mandela had not yet been released. And it was interesting, a white American girl working in townships. It was not so easy to get help from the local colonial people. So we kind of had to forge away on our own a little bit and just stick to our guns and say, we're going to do development whether we get any support or help or not. And we just made it work.
Wow. And that's incredible, is that you got the gut. You don't even know where it's coming from, but you get the gut that at 4 years old you were clear on where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do, and then step by step your life brought you closer and closer to that. And could you tell us as well more about the aim of Sustainable Development Network?
Okay, so I was actually working on the ground in development for many years before founding the Sustainable Development Network. And I was working with local NGOs across South Africa and kind of learning what was going on within their operations. How did they sustain themselves financially? In some cases, they were really dependent on donor aid. In most cases, to be honest with you. Then I started studying and working at Stellenbosch University. So Stellenbosch University is one of the top 5 universities on the continent. And we were teaching the master's degree in sustainable development. And one of our research studies was the nonprofit sector in South Africa and how effective was it. So we started doing research on the implementation of projects within NGOs and how they were rolling out their projects, how efficient and effective they were. And one thing that was highlighted in that research study, Bilitis, was really interesting. It was that there wasn't enough capacity within NGOs in South Africa to roll out programs sustainably. And that really stuck in my heart. And I had a passion for education. And so the more I did the research, the more I realized, okay, well, NGOs actually really need help. So I established the Sustainable Development Network to build capacity within the nonprofits that are serving on the ground at the coalface within the country, helping them to understand how to do monitoring, evaluation, financial management, grant management, fundraising, the use of media and marketing, things like that. And I got a job after the university with the USAID funded PEPFAR program as their sustainability advisor. And I was using a lot of that information to build capacity within their funded nonprofits, the USAID funded nonprofits. And then I just built up a portfolio of courses for the nonprofits. So that's kind of how SDN started. And we're still doing that. We also work with political leaders. We teach them about anti-corruption. We teach them about servant leadership. We teach them about climate change and sustainable development. So we work a lot with government as well. But SDN is pretty much an education-focused, capacity building and training nonprofit that helps other NGOs to provide essential and efficient services within the communities they work in.
So actually, what you really highlight, Lisa, is that it's through educating others, like other NGO, that they can do better, and by doing better, they can take better decisions and thus having better results as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and they can have more impact. So if you've got an NGO that has a big grant, for example, but they're not managing it properly because they don't have the in-house skills to properly keep the receipts and manage the grants, then they're not likely to get further support going on down the road. So we teach them how to be more effective, how to work with their supporters and their sponsors and their donors. Also, we teach them about what we call social enterprise development. So it's generating income so that they won't be dependent on aid, on donor aid, and so that they can be more sustainable long-term. So that's one of the core focuses of our teaching as well, is helping them to learn how to be financially viable and sustainable long-term within the sector that they operate in.
And, well, because yes, you're touching actually on the financement. You already answered a bit to the question, but how can this organization stand and live? So it's not 100%. It's not fully by donation, like by government donation.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. So what I found when we were working with the PEPFAR funds, we had about 11, 12 large nonprofits. We were the donor, and so we were providing the USAID funding for these big NGOs. And then we were looking at how well they managed the grants. And we were also looking at the fact that most of them were 85% or more dependent on US aid, which is hectic. So that raised an alarm bell for me as a sustainability advisor, saying, listen, they've got to start doing things differently, because if they are 85% dependent on one donor, the likelihood of them collapsing when PEPFAR pulls out is very high. So if they're dependent on whether it's US aid or whether it's local government that they're dependent on one or two donors, then the likelihood of success for that nonprofit, it becomes much more difficult. So we teach them to kind of do asset mapping within their own community area. And in aid in Africa, unfortunately, many times people look at what do we not have instead of what do we have. So we go in and we teach them to look at what do we have? What skills do we have in the community? What's the community passion? Instead of chasing aid money, there might be aid money for AIDS, but actually we've got a lot of entrepreneurial skills in our community and we could be funding ourselves. So we teach them to look at their local infrastructure, their local environmental resources, their local financial resources, the skills, the human resources, and we create a map with them. And then we say to them, okay, well, based on the skills that your community has, how can you leverage those skills to generate income that's going to be sustainable long-term for your nonprofit organization so that you can move away from that donor dependency and you can become financially independent on your own. So as SDN, we are 75% dependent on income that we generate, and we're not dependent on donors at all, and we don't ever want to be. So we have to kind of practice what we preach, and then we help others to find ways of being financially independent and sustainable without being dependent on donors. Yeah.
It's very interesting because when you were sharing like about the asset mapping to encourage foundation NGO to find what is out there, like assets, what they can find, and not like what they don't have. It made me remember, like, it's totally like it's on a macro side. It's a macro view of actually us, each individual human being. Instead of focusing ourselves like the individual being on what we don't have, to focus on what are our possibilities. And every single thing you mentioned on the macro view, I could apply it to human being, like to focus on already what we have, and then what are the skills we can develop, who can help us, who can support us, what are different options to make an income as well, to not be dependent on one source of income, for example. So very interesting to match both perspectives at macro level and macro level.
Absolutely. And you know, I know that it's been a really difficult global era at the moment, but there are also so many opportunities. So what you're saying is so true. The season that we've been in and that we've come through actually opens up a lot of opportunities for us to look outside the box. And how can we network? And how can we connect with others? And how can we find new ways of not only creating income, but of supporting one another? So we're all about networking and connecting with others. So one example is that we know what our skills are, and we also know what our limits are. So say, for example, we have a program where we've been given some support for food parcels or soup kitchens, and we don't really have the infrastructure in place. So instead of going and starting a soup kitchen or starting a food delivery service, we'll partner with other NGOs who already have that in place. And then we'll provide the funding we've received to them because they're really good at what they do. And that's not something that we've established. It's not something we want to establish, but they're already in existence doing this good work. So we know what we don't have, but we also have networked enough to know what the other nonprofits are doing and what other people are doing so that we can connect with each other and have more impact. So we also know that we don't have to do everything and we don't have to be everything for everybody, but we network and we find out who's good at what. And how can we learn from each other and tap into those resources that other people have so that we can have a greater impact together and we can do things together. And we love that.
Yes, and so that's why you feel like networking and partnerships are so important. Like it allows to put together existing resources and to help one another, to support one another. It makes me think of a cooperative, if the English word is correct, like of agricultures, like small cultures. Instead of buying each one a tractor, well, there'll be one for the community, one for the different farmers that they can use, and so put together the resources to, first of all, know your neighbor, who is next to you, who can support you with what, and what about you, what can you give, how can you support as well other NGO.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. Absolutely.
And as well, like another mission very close to your heart is as well like One Heart. So could you share with us more about it? What does it stand for you?
Absolutely. So as an education-based nonprofit, I remember it was in 2015. I was reading the statistics in South Africa on the grade 12, the matriculation graduation marks for grade 12 students. So how many children graduated from high school? And I was reading the results, and the newspapers were saying that it was a 78% pass rate. And that didn't sound right, because I work in education and I can see on the ground what's happening. So I started doing some research in how they publish their statistics and results. So what happens is that, unfortunately, the Department of Education they don't tell the public this, but they take the statistics of the high school alone. And then they say these students who went from grade 8 to grade 12, there were 78% of them that passed, but they're not tracking the student from grade 2 up until grade 12. They actually are only tracking the high school student. So if you go back to grade 2 and you track the student from grade 2, the pass rate that year was 42.2%. Can you believe it? I was shocked and horrified. And Bilitis, that hasn't gotten better. So I've been looking at the pass rate for grade 12s for years, and I can't tell you that it's improved or changed. It's actually not getting better. So we have to look at, as an NGO, we had to look at children, and where are we fitting children into our equation? So if we don't fit children into our equation, then we're missing something. So that's when One Heart was developed. And our team got together and we decided, what do we have in our hands? What are we good at? What skills do we have in our own asset mapping? So we had academics, we had ambassadors who were really into sport and mentoring and coaching. We all loved children, and we all had a strong passion for education. So we decided what we'd do is put all of that stuff together. So we looked at, and some of our ambassadors were teachers, already teachers at high school level, at early childhood development level, preschool level, primary school level, and we all loved sport. So we decided we would start hosting sport events to raise funds for curriculum for these schools that were struggling for the children to even be able to read and write. We looked at things like math and science and reading and writing, and we decided to focus on literacy, because if the children are not literate, they're not going to pass science because they can't read. So one of our core partners was the biggest academic publisher in South Africa, and we had one of their executive directors sitting on the Sustainable Development Network board. And they gave me free office space, free access to human resources, financial management. They did all of our printing. So we spoke to them and we said, again, in this networking approach, how can we work together? So they said they would sponsor the printing. They would give us access to nationally approved literacy curriculum for under-resourced primary schools in South Africa. And so we partnered with them to reach children in the poorer schools. We didn't want to work with schools that are rich. We only wanted to work with schools that have very little. And from there, we started running these events. So we were doing trail run events and mountain bike events, and then we were inviting the people who are into that type of sport, which tends to be people that are middle income or upper middle income. But then what we would do, this was really fun, is we would look at the schools we wanted to support. And then we'd get the kids at those schools to come and run with the kids from the upper middle class schools and, you know, the wealthier schools. So it would be kids running for kids and kids running with kids. And it was so cute, Bilitis. What we did on one event is we partnered with Ernie Els, who has an autistic son. So he's got a foundation called Els for Autism, right? Mm-hmm. And so we used his farm. He has a farm here in Stellenbosch where I live. And we used his farm for the event, the trail running event. And then we had children with Down syndrome, children with autism, children with Asperger's, children with special needs. And those children were all coming and they were running with all the other kids and they were running with their teachers. And it was absolutely fantastic. And then the proceeds for that event went to special needs schools. So we put the books, these fantastic books, into the special needs schools after that event. So we were raising our own money so that we could raise funds to put the funds back into these under-resourced schools to help them to improve their literacy so they could get to grade 12, get an education, get a job, and become active citizens of the country. Yeah.
Yes, and as well, I love the picture of having all these kids running, no matter which school they're coming from, because they go again through this race, like through this run. They are all equals.
Yes,
like it's a really strong picture, and it gives as well a like probably the kids from the richer school either realize that they are privileged, and at the same time that these kids are not that different from them. And the reverse as well is probably as well a bit true. Like these kids coming from more difficult schools, they realize that the other kids are as well like as cool as they are. Like it's super deep to make this connection at an early age during this race.
Yeah, and you know what we do? This is really fun. So we sit the kids down. We don't care what color they are. We don't care what background they come from. We don't care where they live. And we say to them, how many of you have had some troubles in your life? And they all raise their hand. We say, okay, all of us have had troubles in our life. So you know what we're going to do today? We're going to write our trouble on the bottom of our shoe. And if the kids don't have shoes, we actually provide shoes, because some of the poorer kids come with bare feet. So we get a sponsor and we provide shoes. We're going to write the trouble on the bottom of our shoe. And then you know what we're going to do? We're going to run, and we're going to run, and we're going to run those troubles off. And then you know what? Everybody who gets to the finish line, it doesn't matter if you're first, it doesn't matter if you're last, everybody gets a medal. So when you come across that finish line, you are a winner, you're going to get a medal, and we are going to run those troubles off of the bottom of our shoes. And so that also helps to equalize the children, because all children have difficulties. All children suffer with trauma. All children go through difficult times. It doesn't matter what background they come from. And it helps them to come together as a community, no matter what house they live in or what area they come from. They start realizing, actually, we're in this together. And together we're going to go and run those challenges off. And they make friends with each other, and they start communicating with each other. So we're trying to help build community in all of this, as well as put books into schools.
Yes, important as well. And that these books get read.
Yeah, they do. Hey?
But actually, like, thank you so much for sharing, Lisa. And actually, like, after like spending over 30 years within NGO, and despite the new challenges that may come along that you shared with me early on, like, for example, with COVID, for example, the human trafficking has increased. However, despite these challenges, what keeps you going? What keeps you persevere and believe on what you do?
That's a really good question. So we again have been doing our research when it comes to the COVID pandemic and the effect that that has on the children, on the families that we've been working with. So we've reached 10,000 children so far with literacy curriculum, which has been fantastic. Then we went back to those schools and to those families, and we said, what's going on now? And the challenge is the increase in domestic violence because of unemployment, the increase in human trafficking. The children are out on the streets. They don't have schools to go to. Their parents have to work. They're being left unattended. So we've got groups that are coming in and harvesting these children and taking them off and selling them. It's been quite hectic. But instead of focusing on the problem, we want to look at what can the solutions be. So we shifted gears, Bilitis. We had to shift gears. So we couldn't run events anymore because of the regulations within the country. We were not allowed to host our trail run events or mountain bike events because of the local regulations. So again, we come together and we say, what do we have in our hands? What are we good at? So my first degree was in psychology, and a lot of our ambassadors have a background in counseling and, working with children. And one of our board members and his wife ran an orphanage for 250 children. And so we've got a background in working in counseling with children. So we moved away from events and we started looking at how can we make an impact with these skills based on the world we live in now. So we started running campaigns for play therapy for children, for bringing educational toys into these communities where we're working because we can't run events anymore. We have also the books that are going to the children still, but we're focusing more on counseling, therapy, and the holistic well-being of the child, given the global crisis that we're in. And it's been amazing to see that the children, children learn, they're social beings. Children are social beings. And when they're isolated, they become depressed, they become anxious. We're finding a lot of anxiety and depression in families. Again, the domestic violence is increasing, human trafficking is increasing. But what we're doing is we're going into the communities and we're going in the afternoons or in the mornings on set days, depending on when the children are around. And then we'll have a little art center where they can draw or paint. And we'll say to them, why don't we have a theme today? And the theme today is going to be my family. And so when they draw a picture of their family as a counselor, I can see what's going on in the family by what's coming out in the artwork. And I can also see what's going on with the individual children as they play. If they're playing ball and there's jealousy or they're hitting each other, things like that, then we can work one-on-one with those children that are acting out. And then we can also go to the families and we can start counseling the families. So we've had to shift gears because of what's going on globally. And this is another thing that we teach nonprofits about, Bilitis, is that you can't stay stuck in your old ways of doing things. The global markets change. The global climate changes. We are now in an era where in our generation, we've never experienced something like this. So how do we adapt based on what's happening, but still provide services that are going to benefit those that we want to be assisting? So that's what we had to do. And it's a lot of fun and we're really enjoying it. It's a lot of change, but we are learning something new every day. And we feel like kids in the middle of all of this as well, with so much to learn. And it's been amazing. It's tough sometimes when you're working with, families that are going through difficulties. But at the same time, we know if we stick to it and if we keep at it, we're going to make a difference. And that's what keeps us going.
Yes. And actually, would you have stories or about how, that are proof to you that what you're doing matters and it makes a difference in the life of others?
Yeah, so lots and lots of stories, some really cute stories. So when we were able to run events, it was kind of funny because at the end of one of the events, I think it was our second event, the trail run and mountain bike event, one of the moms came up to me and she said to me, "You probably won't remember me, but my daughter, who's 8, she went on your trail run event last time you had the event." And my daughter was a bedwetter, and it was really difficult for her because she, people made fun of her and it was damaging her self-esteem. She didn't believe in herself and she was really struggling. And as a mom, I didn't know what to do. And she said, I tried to encourage her, but I could see the devastating results of bedwetting on my child. So she said she came to the trail run, and when she finished, she wasn't first, and she was kind of toward the middle of the end. But when she crossed the finish line, you handed her a medal and you put it around her neck, Lisa, and you told her, "My girl, you're a winner." And the mom says to me, "Lisa, I got an idea." So she went home with Isla, her daughter, and she that night, she took the medal that Isla had won, and she said to Isla, "Take this medal, my darling, and you put it on the bed, on the side of your bed. You hang it on your bed, and you look at that medal every night when you go to sleep. And you tell yourself, I'm a winner." And she said, the mom said to me, "Lisa, she never wet the bed again. Never."
Wow, incredible.
Yeah. And then we've had so many stories like that. We had a grandma, it was very sad. So her son had died about 8 months previously, and she hadn't seen her grandchildren for 8 months because every time the wife of the man who had died would see the grandmother, it would remind her of her husband who had died. And so there was a lot of anxiety there. And so the grandmother was beside herself. So she phoned me and she said, "I want to buy tickets to one of your events so that I can see my grandchildren." And it was so cute because she was not very technologically savvy. So one of my operations manager went to her and showed her how to buy the tickets online. And we bought the tickets with her online. And then the grandmother came to the event with her grandchildren, and she came up to us at the end of the event, my operation manager Amanda and I, and she gave us huge hugs and she had tears coming down her face, and she said, "I cannot thank you enough for bringing my family back together." And we said, "Well, you know what, this was meant to happen for a reason. It's not just us. It's that you also were looking for an opportunity, and you found an opportunity and you persevered. And we are so glad to see that your family has come back together." And the daughter renewed her relationship with the grandmother as well. And, so we hear lots and lots and lots of stories like this, where the children from different communities come together with each other. And we teach the children how to conquer their fears and get over those anxieties. And that's what we're doing with the play therapy now. In fact, I've got a little video clip of one of our ambassadors. Can I show that to you quickly?
Sure, definitely. Let's.
So I'm going to just share my screen. Mm-hmm. And then Blantina, who's one of our play therapists, she can tell you her story. All right, I'm going to share my screen.
Let's leave the stage to Blantina.
Let's give the stage to Blantina. All right, here we go.
So, I am Blantina and I stay here in Kamandi. I've been here for the past 22 years of my life, and we are here in Guyasa, and this is an organization that I grew up in, actually. I came here when my father passed away in 2005. So when he passed away, because he was the breadwinner in the family, my mom needed financial support because we were 4 children at home. So when she needed this financial support, the hospital referred her to this organization here in Guyasa. and Kuyasa then became our home. We were forced at first to come here, but we ended up enjoying coming here because there were a lot of programs for us. There were kids games that we could do. We were helped with homework after school. So yeah, that's why I ended up coming here.
So with Blantina's father died, as she mentioned in the video clip. And then her mother sent her to this center. It's an NGO here in Kayamandi, one of our local Stellenbosch townships. Her mother sent her there because they provided these after-school activities, leadership development, reading and writing, homework support, that type of thing. So when I was looking for play therapists, Blantina had come to one of our courses that we were running, and so I met her. She's got a degree in psychology from Stellenbosch University, and I asked her, Blantina, would you be interested in working with One Heart? And she said she would love to work with One Heart, and she would love to go back into the same community where she was raised, the community that she came from, and she'd like to give back to that community in the same way that she was blessed by the programs that were set up by nonprofits in the community. So Blantina has come full circle in her life, and we've now hired her in One Heart to go back to Kuyasa, the same center, to give back to the same community. And Blantina and I were investigating this local township a few days ago, and we found out that there are only 2 social workers for about 50,000 people. And there are 3 social workers dedicated to the township, but they live very far away and they're rarely there. And also the Office for Social Development, the government office that used to be located in Kayamandi, is no longer there. There was also a trauma center that was attached to the local police station, and that's been closed, and they've replaced it with a soup kitchen. And the psychologist who lives in Kayamandi, who was working in the trauma center, is now working in a soup kitchen. And she takes in girls who have been raped and abused into her own home. But she said there are only 2 social workers in the entire community. And there's so little services that are provided. And we're finding that that's the case in a lot of these township communities. The people don't have access to psychologists. They don't have money to go see a counselor. And they just have to tough it out. And if you look at their well-being and their, the life cycle of, from the time you're a child, if you're traumatized as a child and you just have to keep stuffing that stuff inside, then those dysfunctions and those issues can carry on, further into your life. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to help address, is these challenges, particularly within the COVID pandemic. There's just not enough counseling and therapy and support available for these children. So we want to go back to those 10,000 children, and we want to reach them, and we want to reach more. Mm-hmm. And we want to work with other organizations that are doing this as well. So we've taken hands with other organizations in other provinces within South Africa, not just in our local area. We've reached out to the universities. This is really cool. And so we're working with the universities because their psychology degree students have to have practicals, and the practicals have to be in the communities. So the universities are willing to send their students to us so that we can allocate them within our communities. They can go and do play therapy and counseling with the children. They get their practicals that they need for the degree, and then we get additional hands of support in the community. So here's where the networking comes in again.
Yes, and actually that was actually my question. It was going to be like, do you think there is a lack of person to support in terms of mental health? Because as well, due to the percentage of kids that drop out of school, and so if they drop out, it means there is less students like going to uni, and so thus there is less support on the ground. And it can become a vicious circle if we don't find a way to help these kids continue their studies and and bring them to a path of higher education for them to be able, part of them, to support their community.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's why we have such a passion for education, because if you look at the dropout rate and the fact that only about 38% at this point in time of the children who get to grade 12 pass high school, then they can't find jobs. They have very little experience. If they have no education, it's much more difficult for them to find work. And so without education, it's a big challenge. And now with the COVID pandemic, the isolation, the fact that they're not in school, the schools have been closed for much of last year. It just exacerbates the problem and makes it much more difficult. So the education coupled to leadership development, coaching and mentoring, counseling and therapy. So those are all the types of services that we're supplying, and those are the types of things that we're supporting. And we feel that if we can provide, if we can help to provide those foundations, then those children will be able to grow up in a healthier way. They'll be able to have access to the economy, and they'll be able to also in their sociological frameworks, they'll be healthier as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually it goes back to one of the famous saying of Nelson Mandela, where he says that education is the most powerful weapon in the world to change the world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
And on that note, Lisa, what would be your message to our listeners? What can we do?
Well, this might sound.
Where do we start?
Yeah, this might sound a little bit funny, but what I would challenge your listeners, I would really challenge your listeners. Africa needs help, that's for sure. But what's going on in your own backyard? What's going on in your community? What's going on at home? And if you as an individual, if you as a listener, if your passion is coaching or mentoring or sport or development or education or the environment or the elderly, if that's where your heart is and if that's where your heart beats, then what are you doing in that sector within your own community to support those areas of need? So that's the first challenge that I would put out there, is that even when we have very little, actually, we still have a lot to give. So what skills can I give? What time can I give? Look at what you're doing, Bilitis. What you're doing is you're taking your skills, your voice, your knowledge and experience, and you're putting it out there to make a big difference in the world. So what are the rest of us doing? What skills are we using to make the world a better place, to make our communities a better place? So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is, if you would like to support the children in Africa, we can give you opportunities to do that. So can I maybe share my screen of our website?
Sure.
Is that okay? Because it's easier to do that than it is to kind of say, okay, well, this is our website. Let me just see here.
Here we are.
There's One Heart for Kids. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this is our website, which is called oneheartforkids.co.za. And then we've also got a Facebook page. So with One Heart, you can see that 1,000, we speak in rands because that's the South African currency. So it's a lot less if you're thinking of euros or dollars. So 1,000 rand is about $80 US. So that enables a play therapist to work with a group of children for a month. $80 a month can provide play therapy for an entire group of children for a whole month. And then 300 Rand provides 6 CAPS approved books for children to read. And this is the literacy curriculum that they use in the schools here. And we're giving it to the kids individually, and we're also reading with the kids. So this gives you an idea. 50 Rand provides an educational toy for a child to play with. That's a couple of euros.
Mhm.
It provides educational toys. And then we've also got a QR code. And then we've got a link if people have a debit card or a credit card and they'd want to donate online.
Mhm.
So those are the ways that people could also support One Heart. But my first challenge would be, how are you supporting locally? What are
Yes,
you doing in your own backyard?
yes, and as you mentioned, Lisa, like, so thank you for sharing. Like, first of all, about One Heart, what I love, like, what you can see here, everyone, is how easy is it for you to see where you're making a difference and how you're making a difference. Like, how much does it correspond to make what difference? And as well, like, I saw, like, with this QR code. So if we scroll down just a little bit, we can see the QR code, and so it's very easy to access. You made it very easy to make a difference. And as well, like, to bounce back on what you mentioned, it's, yeah, sometimes, like, we have a tendency to think that if we have to give something, we always think about money, but it's not only about money, it's about the time we can dedicate as well to those in needs, or to, as well, like, it could be giving some other things that we don't use, like even books, like give books to our to give back books to our community, and it's an endless list of how we can make a difference in our own community, and thank you for reminding us on that, Lisa. And
time. Do you have any time that you
Exactly.
skills? If you're an accountant, maybe you can go in and help a local organization with their accounting. If you're good at social media, maybe you can go in and help a local organization to make their social media platform a little bit more up to date. So what are our skills, and how can we give those skills away to others as well?
exact. And how can we find out more about what you do, Lisa?
Well, we've got Facebook pages for both One Heart for Kids. So if you go into Facebook and you type in One Heart for Kids, you should find us. If you go into Facebook and you type in Sustainable Development Network, you'll find us. And then we've got websites, oneheartforkids.co.za. And then we've got sustainabledevelopmentnetwork.org or sdnafrica.org. And lots of information is on the websites, on the Facebook page, so they can find out more like that.
Well, super. Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming up on Connexion. Thank you for sharing, like, your calling of and your drive from when you were 4 years old to I will be in Africa one day, and telling us the story of step by step how you went there, and as well how you realized through your journey that you went into depth about working with international organizations and following their agenda, to as well have the opposite experience of literally being on the ground like you do on your day-to-day now, and to realize the real needs of right now of the community, and think that actually it is where you can make a difference quicker and more visible for yourself, but as well for those in need the most. So thank you once again for your dedication to your community, and as well, like, support NGO to teach them, to educate them on how they can as well make a difference, and a sustainable difference. Because what matters is not only what we can do in today, but as well how are we preparing for the future to maintain these efforts. Because it's when we sustain the effort on a long-term run that we can have bigger results. So thank you so much once again.
Absolutely.
And for our audience, well, I invite you definitely to subscribe for more inspiring interviews on Connexion, and like, feel free to leave a comment below. What does it inspire you? What is it that you want to do more of within your community? What are you already doing within your community? And I see you all on next Friday. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Belitas.